Today I'm going to try out the Teexpert Silicone Mold Making Kit. This is about $30 on Amazon for about 21 ounce. It doesn't say in the description, but it is a tin cure, and I assume a 10A hardness silicone. As a kit, it does come with everything you need, including gloves and some stirring sticks that I wish were a little bit longer, but it is a 2-part by weight with a 5-minute working time and a 24 to 72 hour cure time. And I'm just going to use some of my 3D printed containers to make some cap molds. It also comes with plastic containers for mixing that are labeled with measurements. So I'm all ready to get started with my hybrid cap and sprue mold. I use a thick tape so that I can do it in just one strip, and then make sure that I get a good seal on the bottom, which on this first round one that I did not get a very good seal on the bottom, and you will see later that it leaks, but you want to make sure that you get that sealed really well so that it doesn't leak. You could also go around the outside with a hot glue gun. I have never really needed to. This is the first time it's actually ever leaked, so bad example, but here you go. And then you put your dice in flat. I like to do it so that the high number is going to be at the bottom in case I put things in there. That makes it easier for me to orient them correctly. This first one I'm going to do a jumbo 30mm D20, and then in a smaller container I made, instead of doing a full set of dice, I'm just going to do 2 normal size D20s. I could do 4, maybe even 5, but I only had 2 available. One is a 3D printed master that I haven't had any issues with cure inhibition before, and it is, I think, from the Nova 3D standard, actually from probably a year or more ago. And just make sure that you stick those in as well, nice and flat. I'm going to put the high numbers on the top again and get those ready to make some silicone to pour. It says to do by weight, so I'm going to do the container, do the tear so that I can remove the weight of the container, and then I'm going to do 50 milliliters and see how much that weighs in each part, A and B. I'm going to use their one-size-fits-all gloves and go ahead and do that. It looks like it comes out to almost 2 ounces. And then I'm going to do the part B at as close as I can get it to the same weight. And if you don't have a scale, it turns out that that's okay because they are the same volume anyway. You just want to make sure that you mix it really well. I mix it at least 5 minutes, and I like to go back and forth between containers to get everything at the bottom from both parts, and also to make it easier to remove the silicone that's in excess at the bottom later. Make sure to scrape the sides and the bottom as best you can. Again, I wish this stick was a little bit longer. I have to hold it barely on the end and it still is getting on my fingers, but maybe you don't always have to do a full 100 milliliters for your mold. Once it's all stirred up, I'm going to pour it in, and on the left is the one that leaked, and on the right is the one that I did afterwards, after I made sure that the seal was a lot better. So I made a bit of a mess on the left, but I didn't quite have enough to fill the entire mold anyway on the right, so I ended up having to take from the spill and pour it into the other mold anyway, so it worked out. I also try to have at least a 1/4 inch or so over the top of the dice so that it has a good solid bottom. Yep, it's a bit messy, but hey, that's what shop towels are for. And I'm going to go ahead and put that in the pressure pot, and once it's cured I can go ahead and remove those and move on to the cap. There are some bubbles in the top, but they're just from pouring the excess on top of it from the spill. There are no bubbles in the actual mold itself on the inside, it's just on the top there. So it didn't really affect my mold. So now I carefully peel back the tape. It is really strong, so I'm going to go fairly slowly just to make sure that it doesn't pull up the edges of the silicone with it. And then once I get that off, I'll be ready to pull that out, separate it from the sides, which actually isn't that difficult, especially with a 3D printed container. and then where I have my keys already put in the bottom there, I can just push it the opposite way and push it out. While I do that, I would like to take this opportunity to thank you, patrons. Yes, thank you so much for your support. It is greatly appreciated. Words can't describe how awesome you are. Also, thank you, Teexpert, for sending me this silicone to try out. It worked pretty well. Tape doesn't stick to silicone very well, but I will use some tape around the outside just to have something to fill my cap with, and then stick it in the mold. It's actually easier before you tape it if you're going to do the sprue hybrid method to put your sprues on first and then tape it, but I taped it and then later put my sprues on. I then used the petroleum jelly to coat everywhere on the silicone where I don't want the new silicone of the cap to stick to. So everywhere except for your item or your dice or whatever it is you're making a mold of. And then I'm going to now glue my sprues on, which would have been easier to do before putting the tape on because it gets in the way a little bit of your hand to try and stick it in there. But once the sprues are all in, I mix up some more silicone and pour it in the lid up to the top of my little sprues, put it in the pressure pot, and once it's cured, I can take those apart. The tape's a little hard to get off, but it comes out. Make sure to remove the sprues. They should just snap right off. You might have to do some twisting, and then pull the silicone apart. You might have to use a craft knife in some places where it might be a little bit stuck. Pull it apart carefully and use the craft knife to cut any of the parts that might still be sticking to the silicone. And once you have the cap moved off, go around the edges of your items, your dice, make sure that you get it to kind of release a little bit. It's really not that difficult. You don't need to use a mold release for it. It comes right off, but I go around the outsides first and then I can just pop them all out. This was the second mold that I did a full set with, but it was exactly the same with the smaller mold that I only did 2 in. But there you have it, a perfectly good mold with a cap with some sprues in it, and it's already keyed so it fits together in one direction and it's easy to put together. I did make my funnels larger for this one so that my reservoirs can hold more resin and have less chance of having some holes in it. And then I'm just going to make some dice real quick. I just put a little bit of resin in and then just do a drop of a color of alcohol ink and put some more resin, some more alcohol ink. And at the very top, I happen to not have quite enough resin, so the ink is right up against the cap, which does stain it, but it did not affect any of my future castings with this mold, so it was just fine. Go ahead, just like when I was making the mold, remove the sprues by twisting. There's the jumbo that I did, remove the flashing, and then you can pull it out. I cast these ones with the liquid glass deep pour resin that takes about 3 days to cure. Someone had asked if I would use some alcohol inks in them to see how they do. They did pretty well. They didn't sink as much as I had expected them to. The only ones that did sink was like the gold color, but I think that's just because it was more dense anyway and probably will sink in any resin that you use. So probably want to just mix that one rather than do drops, but overall it worked pretty well. The silicone on my tray was looking pretty sad and sickly, so I removed it and decided to use this silicone to put another layer on there. I like to do that because it makes it easier for when I make dice on the trays, and if I accidentally spill some resin, then it's easy to just peel off, unlike what I did the first time, as you can see by all the resin that is stuck on the wood. But that all gets covered up with this, and it does cure bubble free, so that's very nice. I did not put that in the pressure pot, and it came out great. Overall, this silicone is pretty durable and pliable. It works well for cap molds. It should work okay for sprue molds, though it isn't as durable or stretchy as the dragon skin. It should still work well for your projects if you wanted to try it. I hope this video was helpful to you. If you liked it, go ahead and click that thumbs up. Perhaps subscribe in case you want to see future videos I do. And thank you for watching.